Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for more stories. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Matthew Hollis stood in his office overlooking the Seattle skyline, reviewing security protocols for a tech client. 14 years ago, he'd left military intelligence to build something legitimate, something that would keep him home with his family. Hollis Security Consulting had become one of the Northwest's premier firms, and he'd done it alongside his business partner, Brian Caldwell. Matthew, got a minute? Brian appeared in the doorway, his practiced smile firmly in place. At 39, Brian looked like he'd stepped from a corporate catalog. Tailored suit, perfect hair, calculated charm. What's up? That Everett contract. I'm thinking we lowball the bid. Get our foot in the door. Brian leaned against the desk. Could be huge for expansion. Matthew frowned. Lowballing compromises quality. That's not how we operate. It's called strategy, Matt. Sometimes you need to think bigger. Brian's smile never wavered, but something cold flickered in his eyes. This wasn't the first disagreement. Over the past 7 months, Brian had pushed for aggressive expansion, cutting corners, taking on clients Matthew's instincts warned against. The man who'd once shared Matthew's vision of building a reputation on integrity now seemed fixated on profit margins and growth charts. I'll review the numbers, Matthew said neutrally. That evening, Matthew drove to his daughter's soccer practice. Lily Hollis, 9 years old, with her mother's dark eyes and his stubborn determination, scored twice during scrimmage. His wife, Amanda, a pediatric nurse at Swedish Medical Center, arrived just in time to see the second goal. How was work? Amanda asked as they watched Lily high-five her teammates. Interesting. Brian's pushing another questionable deal. Amanda's expression tightened. She'd never warmed to Brian, something Matthew attributed to her sharp instincts about people. You trust your gut, Matthew. It's kept us safe all these years. Their son, Jason, 15 and perceptive beyond his years, looked up from his phone. Dad, is Mr. Caldwell still coming to dinner this weekend? Unless I can find a good excuse, Matthew muttered. Mom doesn't like him, Lily announced, climbing into the car. Lily, Amanda warned gently, but didn't deny it. That night, after the kids were asleep, Matthew sat in his home office reviewing company finances. Something nagged at him. Small discrepancies in accounts Brian managed exclusively. Nothing provable, just patterns that didn't sit right. He'd spent years in intelligence learning to trust those instincts. His phone buzzed. Trevor Simmons, his old Marine buddy who now ran a private investigation firm in Portland. Coffee tomorrow? Have something you should see. Matthew stared at the message. Trevor didn't reach out unless it was serious. Morning 0830 usual spot. He closed his laptop and looked out at his quiet neighborhood homes with lights and windows, families settling in for the night. He'd built this life carefully, methodically, creating the stability he'd never had growing up in foster care, giving his kids the childhood he dreamed of. Whatever Trevor had found, whatever was coming, Matthew Hollis was ready to protect it. The coffee shop in Pike Place Market was crowded enough for privacy. Trevor Simmons arrived exactly on time. Marines didn't break the habit. The two men had served together in intelligence, trusting each other with their lives on operations most people would never know existed. You look worried, Matthew observed. That's because you should be. Trevor slid a thin folder across the table. 4 weeks ago, Karen Hughes, FBI agent, friend from my Army days, asked me to look into Brian Caldwell. Quietly. Matthew's pulse quickened. Why? His name popped up in an investigation peripherally at first. Shipping manifests that don't match cargo weights. Warehouse leases under shell companies. Meetings with some serious bad actors. Matthew opened the folder. Photos showed Brian with Victor Salazar, a man Matthew recognized from intelligence briefings. A broker with ties to South American cartels. Another photo, Brian shaking hands with Damian Hargrove, a Port Authority official currently under federal investigation for corruption. Jesus Christ. There's more. Trevor's voice dropped. 3 weeks ago, a whistleblower was scheduled to testify about illegal shipments through Seattle ports. He died in a car accident the night before. Brake line failure. Investigators ruled it an accident, but Karen's not convinced. You think Brian? I think Brian Caldwell isn't who you think he is. That security firm perfect cover for moving shipments, accessing secure facilities, manipulating manifests. You've got credentials, government contracts, legitimate business fronts. Matthew's mind raced. Every suspicious decision, every questionable client, every time Brian had pushed him toward expansion, it all crystallized into a horrifying picture. "He's been using our company to facilitate illegal trafficking," Matthew said flatly. "That's Karen's theory. She wanted to warn you before things escalate. If they move on Brian, you could be caught in the investigation unless you distance yourself now. I need evidence, concrete proof before I make any moves. Matthew, these people don't play around. That whistleblower is dead. If Brian's suspects, I understand the stakes." Matthew's voice carried the weight of 100 dangerous operations. "But I won't abandon what I built. I'll handle this." Trevor studied him. "I know that. Look, you're not planning to just walk away, would you?" "No, but I'd be careful. Brian's got resources, connections, the kind that make problems disappear." That afternoon, Matthew returned to the office to find Brian meeting with a potential client. At least that's what his calendar claimed. Through the glass walls, Matthew watched his partner's animated conversation with a man whose expensive suit couldn't hide his criminal bearing. Jason called while Matthew sat in his car outside the office building. "Dad, when are you coming home?" "Soon, buddy. Everything okay?" "Yeah, just wondering. We're having tacos." A pause. "Dad, that thing you always say about trusting your gut?" "Yeah. I saw Mr. Caldwell's car at our house today during lunch. Mom wasn't home. She was at work. He was just sitting there, parked across the street for like 12 minutes, then drove away." Ice crystallized in Matthew's veins. "Did he see you?" "I don't think so. I was upstairs. Is something wrong?" "No, buddy. Thanks for telling me. I'll be home in 25 minutes. Matthew hung up and immediately called Trevor. "Brian was watching my house today while my family was home. That's a threat. That's reconnaissance." Matthew started the engine. "He's either suspicious or he's preparing something. I need to know which." "What do you need?" "Access to everything Karen has. And I need surveillance on Brian starting now. Every move, every call, every meeting." "Matthew, if you're planning what I think you're planning, I'm planning to protect my family and dismantle whatever operation Brian's running. In that order." That night, Matthew didn't tell Amanda about Brian's surveillance. He wouldn't frighten her until he understood the full scope of the threat. Instead, he installed additional security cameras around their property, checked all locks twice, and moved his service weapon from the safe to his nightstand. Jason noticed. The boy was too observant for his own good. "We're okay, right, Dad?" Jason asked from his bedroom doorway. Matthew met his son's eyes. Amanda's perceptive gaze reflected there. "Yes, and we're going to stay that way. I promise." But as Matthew lay awake that night, listening to his house settle, watching shadows move across the ceiling, he knew promises meant nothing against men like Brian Caldwell. Only action mattered, only staying 3 steps ahead. And Matthew Hollis had spent 14 years mastering exactly that. 3 nights later, everything changed. Jason couldn't sleep. His AP history essay was due tomorrow, and he'd been researching Cold War espionage tactics when he heard voices outside. At 2:30 a.m., voices didn't belong in their quiet subdivision. He crept to his window. 2 dark SUVs were parked 3 houses down, engines running, lights off. 4 men emerged, and even from this distance, Jason could see they weren't police. Wrong gear, wrong bearing, wrong everything. His father had taught him to observe, to trust his instincts. Jason had grown up around his dad's military buddies, heard enough stories to recognize operators when he saw them. These men moved with dangerous purpose toward his house. Jason didn't hesitate. He ran to his parents' room and shook his father awake. "Dad, wake up," he whispered urgently. "We have to go. Don't make a sound." Matthew was alert instantly, the way he always was, muscle memory from years of training. "What is it?" "Armed men outside. Coming here." Matthew didn't question, didn't hesitate. He trusted his son's judgment because he taught the boy to be certain before sounding alarms. "Get your sister." Quietly. While Jason woke Lily, Matthew grabbed his go bag, always packed, always ready, and his weapon. Amanda was already pulling on clothes, her nurse's training making her efficient in crisis. "What's happening?" Lily asked, confused and frightened. "We're going on an adventure," Matthew said calmly, lifting his daughter. "But we need to be very, very quiet. Can you do that?" Lily nodded against his shoulder, trusting completely. They crept downstairs in darkness. Through the kitchen window, Matthew spotted a figure approaching the back door. They had maybe 30 seconds. The family moved through the garage into Matthew's Ford Explorer. He'd backed it in always for exactly this kind of situation. They strapped in silently, and Matthew started the engine immediately, pulling into the street. "Look behind now," Jason said urgently, pointing back at their house window. Matthew's heart stopped. In the upstairs window, Jason's room laser sights swept across the walls. Red dots dancing through darkness, searching. Then muffled flashes lit the interior. Impacts shredded furniture where his son should have been sleeping. "Get down." Matthew accelerated hard, taking the corner at speed. Behind them, the SUV's headlights blazed to life. Amanda had her phone out. "I'm calling 911. They'll be gone before police arrive," Matthew said. "This is professional." Matthew's mind raced through possibilities. "Brian sent them," he said. "How do you know?" "Because I've been investigating him for the past 4 days. He found out." Jason's voice was steady despite the terror. "Dad, they're following us." Matthew checked the mirror. Both SUVs were gaining, splitting to flank him. He couldn't outrun them in a family vehicle. Couldn't lead them on a chase through residential streets, endangering neighbors. He needed an advantage. Matthew yanked the wheel hard, threading through a construction zone. Orange barrels scattered, creating obstacles for the pursuing vehicles. He killed his headlights, taking a sharp turn into an industrial area he knew from security contracts. Everyone stayed down and quiet. He navigated by memory warehouses, loading docks, chain-link fencing. The SUV's headlights swept through the darkness, searching. Matthew pulled behind a loading dock, killing the engine, windows down to listen. Footsteps. Radio chatter. Lost visual. Splitting up to search. Lily whimpered softly. Amanda held her close, hand over their daughter's mouth, not restricting, but comforting. Jason watched his father, learning, understanding this wasn't the time for questions. Matthew's phone vibrated. "Trevor. Karen Hughes says an arrest warrant was issued for Brian tonight. Must have gotten tipped off. Are you safe?" Matthew typed one-handed. "Negative. Under attack. Need extraction." The response was immediate. "Location." Matthew sent coordinates. "Family with me. Armed pursuit." "Copy. 12 minutes. Stay alive." 12 minutes might as well be forever. Footsteps approached their position. Through the Explorer's mirror, Matthew saw a figure rounding the corner, weapon raised. He squeezed Amanda's hand once, a signal they'd established years ago. "Stay ready." The gunman swept past, focused on other hiding spots. Matthew waited until the man was 10 feet past, then moved. He exited silently, years of training making him a ghost. The gunman never heard him coming. Matthew's arm wrapped around the man's throat, applying pressure. 7 seconds. The man went limp. Matthew dragged him behind a dumpster, taking his radio and weapon. Brian wasn't cheap with his crew. The radio crackled. "Sector B clear. Moving to C." Another voice responded. "Copy." Matthew climbed back into the Explorer. "They're moving away. We've got a window." He started the engine and rolled slowly, headlights still off, using the building shadows. They emerged onto an access road just as a police cruiser turned the corner. "Trevor's doing, no doubt." Matthew flashed his brights twice. The cruiser's lights came on, and suddenly they had an escort. The SUVs wouldn't risk engaging police directly. They drove to the FBI field office where Karen Hughes was waiting, early 40s, sharp-eyed, with the bearing of someone who'd seen too much but never stopped caring. "Matthew Hollis." "Karen Hughes. Your friend Trevor gave me the heads up. Come on, let's get your family somewhere safe." Inside, while Amanda comforted Lily and Jason gave a detailed account to an agent, Karen laid out what they knew. "Brian Caldwell is the linchpin in a major trafficking operation. We've been building a case for 9 months. Tonight, we moved to arrest him, but someone tipped him off, probably Damian Hargrove, the Port Authority official. Brian panicked and decided to silence potential witnesses. His own partner," Matthew said coldly. "And my children. You were a liability. You had access, knowledge, credibility. If you testified, you'd destroy him. I don't plan to just testify." Matthew's voice carried steel. "I plan to destroy him anyway." Karen studied him carefully. "We need Brian alive to roll up his network. Then you better catch him before I do." Matthew dash. "Karen, he sent people to my home. Tried to hurt my family while they slept. I've seen men like Brian before, protected by money, lawyers, connections. Even if you catch him, he'll walk or cut a deal. This is the FBI. We'll handle it." Matthew stood. "No. You'll try. I'll succeed. Keep my family safe, Agent Hughes. That's all I need from you. I can't let you obstruct. You can't stop me either. I spent 14 years in military intelligence doing things that would make Brian's operation look like a lemonade stand. He made this personal. He involved my children. Karen's expression shifted. She'd read his file, knew his background. What are you planning? Something Brian will never see coming. Because he thinks I'm just a security consultant who got lucky. He doesn't know who I really am. Matthew turned to his family. Jason met his eyes with understanding beyond his years. Amanda nodded once. She knew her husband knew what he was capable of when protecting those he loved. We'll stay here tonight, Matthew said. Tomorrow I go hunting. The FBI safe house was a nondescript rental in Bellevue. While Amanda tried to maintain normalcy for Lily cartoons, breakfast, forced smiles, Jason sat with his father in the dining room, watching Matthew transform into someone else. You're different, Jason observed. I'm remembering. Matthew checked his weapon methodically. All the things I tried to leave behind when you were born. Were you like them? The men who came. No. I stopped men like them. That was my job. Matthew met his son's eyes. I've done things I'm not proud of, Jason. Things necessary to keep good people safe. I never wanted you to see this side of me. I'm glad I am. Means you'll win. The simple faith in his son's voice nearly broke Matthew. I'll keep you safe. That's what matters. Trevor Simmons arrived at noon with equipment, surveillance gear, secure communications, a laptop that could crack systems Matthew couldn't legally access alone. Karen Hughes pretended not to notice. Brian's gone underground, Trevor reported. Abandoned his house, office, everything. But he's got to surface eventually. He'll go for assets, Matthew said. Money, backup identities, leverage. Men like Brian always have an exit strategy. Karen's team was monitoring airports, borders. He won't use conventional routes. Matthew pulled up a map. Brian knows standard protocols, but there's one thing he needs before he runs. Proof I'm dead. Otherwise, I'm a loose end that haunts him forever. You think he'll come for you again? I'm counting on it. Karen entered, her expression grim. Victor Salazar, Brian's associate from the photos, just turned up at a warehouse in Tacoma. We've got surveillance. Then let's go. Matthew grabbed his jacket. This is FBI business. I'm a security consultant assisting your investigation. I know Brian's patterns, his thinking. You need me. Karen didn't look happy, but she didn't argue. The warehouse district was exactly the kind of place that attracted illegal operations, isolated, industrial, easy to control sight lines. FBI vehicles set up a perimeter while drones provided aerial surveillance. Through binoculars, Matthew watched Salazar supervise the loading of crates into a cargo truck. We could take Salazar now, an agent suggested. Wait, Matthew said. He's expecting someone. 20 minutes later, a black Audi A6 pulled up. Brian Caldwell emerged, looking haggard but still arrogant. He wore a baseball cap and jacket, basic disguise, but effective from a distance. There, Karen said. We move now. No. Brian always has backup. Look at the roof. Through her scope, Karen swore. 2 shooters covered the warehouse entrance. Brian wasn't taking chances. If we breach, those shooters open up. Could be civilian casualties. Karen's jaw tightened. We need those shooters down first. I can do it, Matthew said. Absolutely not, Matthew. I've done this before, counter-threat operations, hostile environments. I can neutralize both before they know I'm there. This isn't the military. No, it's my family's life. Your choice. Wait for SWAT and risk Brian slipping away, or let me do what I'm trained for. Trevor spoke up. He's right. Matthew's skill set is perfect for this. Karen struggled with protocol versus practicality. Finally, she handed Matthew a tactical radio. You have 9 minutes. Miss that window, we breach anyway. Matthew moved through the industrial complex like a ghost, using shipping containers and warehouse walls for cover. Years of training overrode the civilian life he'd built. This was muscle memory, instinct honed across a dozen countries against enemies who never saw him coming. The first shooter was sloppy, visible against the skyline, focused on the FBI positions below. Matthew used a drainage pipe to reach the roof access, moving with patience learned in intelligence work. When he struck, the shooter never made a sound, just slumped unconscious. Matthew zip-tied him and took his rifle. The second shooter was better trained, constantly scanning. Matthew couldn't get close without exposure, so he didn't try to get close. He keyed the radio. Shooter 2 has thermal scope. Karen, I need a distraction. South approach. Hot signatures. Copy. 30 seconds later, 3 agents moved into the shooter's sight line, deliberately exposed, drawing attention. The shooter swung his rifle to track them. Matthew moved. By the time the shooter realized the distraction's purpose, Matthew had his arm around the man's throat. Another unconscious threat neutralized. Shooters down, Matthew radioed. You're clear. The FBI breached with overwhelming force. Brian saw them coming and ran, Salazar providing covering fire. Agents flooded the warehouse, tactical teams moving with precision. Matthew watched from the roof as Brian reached a back exit where Trevor waited with 2 federal marshals. Brian's expression when he saw the trap was almost worth everything he'd done. Almost. But when they brought Brian out in handcuffs, the man was smiling, looking directly at the building where Matthew stood. That's wrong, Matthew muttered. Too easy. Too cooperative. Matthew's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. Hello, Matthew. Brian's voice smooth as ever. Yes, I'm in custody. No, it doesn't matter, because right now one of my people is watching your family in that FBI safe house. Room 5C, isn't it? Your daughter likes cartoons. Tom and Jerry, specifically. Matthew's blood turned to ice. You have a choice, Brian continued. You can testify against me, help the FBI, do the right thing, or you can back off, tell them you made a mistake, that you have no evidence. If you cooperate, your family stays safe. If you don't, the line went dead. Matthew was running before conscious thought caught up, vaulting from the roof to a shipping container, hitting the ground, sprinting. Trevor saw him and knew instantly something was catastrophically wrong. The safe house, Matthew gasped. He knows where they are. They drove like madness was chasing them, because it was. Matthew called Karen, warned the protective detail, but every second felt like an eternity. When they screeched into the safe house parking lot, everything looked normal. Too normal. Matthew took the stairs 3 at a time, Trevor right behind him. The protective agents were at their posts, looking confused by his panic. Status, Matthew barked. All clear, sir. No movement. Matthew kicked open the apartment door. Amanda, Jason, and Lily looked up from lunch, startled, but unharmed. Dad, Jason said, what's wrong? Matthew checked every room, every window. Nothing. No threat. His phone buzzed again. Brian. Just a test. Matthew proving I can reach them anytime. The real question is, what are you willing to sacrifice? Matthew stared at his family, then at the phone. Brian thought he'd won. Thought fear would make Matthew retreat, compromise, bend. Brian was wrong. Trevor, Matthew said quietly. I need everything. Brian's financial records, his safe houses, his contacts, everything the FBI has, and everything they don't. Matthew, what are you thinking? I'm thinking Brian just made a fatal mistake. He showed me he's desperate enough to threaten my family again, which means he's vulnerable. You can't go after him alone. I'm not going to. Matthew's expression hardened into something dangerous. I'm going to dismantle his entire organization, everyone who helped him, everyone who enabled him, and then I'm going to make sure Brian Caldwell spends the rest of his life in a cell knowing I destroyed everything he built. Amanda touched his arm. Be careful who you become in the process. I will. But Brian chose this war. Now he'll learn what happens when you threaten a Hollis. The next 36 hours transformed Matthew Hollis from victim into strategist. Trevor's contacts provided information the FBI couldn't access, not legally. Dark web chatter, offshore account traces, surveillance from private operators who didn't ask questions. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Natalie Caldwell, Brian's wife, appeared at the FBI office on the 4th day. 36, impeccably dressed, she looked like a woman who'd finally made a devastating decision. I need protection, she told Karen. And I'm willing to testify against my husband. In the interview room, with Matthew watching through one-way glass, Natalie laid out the truth. I didn't know at first. Brian was charming, successful, everything I wanted in a partner. We married 6 years ago. She twisted her wedding ring. About 3 years ago, he changed, more secretive, angry, paranoid. He'd disappear for days with vague explanations. Money appeared in accounts I couldn't trace. When did you realize what he was doing? Karen asked. 7 months ago. I overheard a phone call. Victor Salazar was threatening him something about a shipment that got intercepted. Brian promised it wouldn't happen again. I started investigating. She slid a flash drive across the table. Financial records, shell companies, names of everyone in his network. I copied everything. Matthew entered the room. Natalie flinched but held his gaze. Why now, he asked. Why not 7 months ago? Because 7 months ago, I was still in denial. I told myself I was misunderstanding, that Brian had explanations. Then 4 nights ago, I heard him order your family harmed. Her voice broke. He was on the phone in his study. He said, the Hollises know too much. Clean it up. All of them, including the kids. I realized I was married to a monster. You could have warned us. I called 911 anonymously, gave them your address, said there was an active threat. It was all I could do without Brian knowing. Matthew checked with Karen, who nodded. We got an anonymous call that night. Helped us prioritize response. I can't undo what Brian did, Natalie continued. But I can help end him. Everything on that drive, it's enough to take down his entire operation. Over the next 2 days, Matthew and Trevor worked with FBI analysts, cross-referencing Natalie's data with their own intelligence. The picture that emerged was staggering. Brian's network extended across 4 states, involving port officials, customs agents, and warehouse operators. He'd been trafficking military-grade weapons to buyers overseas. The profits, nearly $38 million over 4 years, flowed through legitimate businesses, including Hollis Security Consulting. He used our company's credentials to access secure facilities, Matthew said, reviewing shipping manifests. Every security contract we won gave him another avenue for moving illegal cargo. Damian Hargrove, the corrupt port official, was Brian's primary enabler. For a cut of profits, Hargrove altered manifests, misdirected inspections, and eliminated paper trails. The whistleblower who died hadn't been the first. 2 other potential witnesses had suffered accidents in the past 20 months. We can prosecute Brian for trafficking, conspiracy, and homicide, Karen said. This is life imprisonment without parole. Not enough, Matthew said. Karen blinked. What do you mean? This is comprehensive. Brian will lawyer up, claim he was coerced, pin blame on subordinates. Men like him always find angles. Matthew studied the evidence board. We need something so devastating he can't escape it. What are you thinking? Matthew pointed to a name on the board. Hector Morales. Brian's attorney, also on his payroll, facilitating money laundering through legal structures. If we flip Morales, we get testimony that Brian directly ordered criminal activities. No deniability. Morales won't flip, Trevor said. Attorney-client privilege, and he's too invested. Everyone has pressure points. Matthew pulled up Morales's background. He's got a daughter at Stanford. Medical school ambitions. Expensive. If Morales goes down, she loses everything. Trevor frowned. That's leverage, but it's also pressuring an innocent person. I'm not pressuring her. I'm giving Morales a choice: cooperate and protect his daughter's future, or go to prison and watch her dreams collapse. Karen looked uncomfortable. We can't officially sanction that. Then unofficially, let me have a conversation with Morales. Matthew dash, Karen, Brian ordered my children harmed. I'm trying to do this the right way, but I will get justice. Help me do it legally, or I'll find another method. The implicit threat hung in the air. Finally, Karen nodded. Morales is holding a meeting at his office tomorrow. We can arrange for you to accidentally encounter him. That evening, Matthew returned to the safe house. Jason was doing homework. Lily was drawing. Amanda was reading case files. She'd insisted on helping review medical records related to the accidental deaths. They weren't accidents, Amanda said quietly. The whistleblower had brake fluid contamination. The second victim fell from his apartment balcony, ruled suicide, but he had defensive wounds. The third drowned in his pool, even though he was a competitive swimmer. Brian covered his tracks. Not well enough. I've documented everything. It'll stand up in court. Matthew kissed her forehead. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just end this so we can go home. Jason looked up from calculus homework. Dad, when you talk to Brian's lawyer tomorrow, what are you going to say? The truth that he's got one chance to save himself and his daughter. Will he take it? If he's smart. And if he's not, Matthew met his son's perceptive gaze. Then I'll make sure he wishes he had. The next day, Hector Morales left his downtown office at exactly 6:30 p.m. Matthew was waiting by Morales's Audi. Mr. Morales, I'm Matthew Hollis. We need to talk. Morales went pale. I don't speak with you without Brian's permission. Brian's in federal custody, facing life imprisonment. You're next on the indictment list: conspiracy, money laundering, accessory to homicide. The FBI has your financial records, your communications, everything. I'm an attorney. I was providing legal services. You were laundering blood money. You knew Brian was trafficking weapons. You helped hide assets used to fund harm. Matthew stepped closer. But here's the thing. You've got a daughter, right? Stanford, pre-med. Brilliant future ahead of her. Morales' expression shifted to protective fury. You leave Sophia out of this. I'm trying to. If you go to prison, what happens to her tuition? Her dreams? Everything you've built for her. That's blackmail. No, it's reality. You have one option: cooperate with the FBI. Full testimony against Brian. In exchange, a deal and witness protection. Brian will have me hurt. Brian's going away forever. His network is collapsing. Victor Salazar's already cutting a deal. Damian Hargrove is in custody. You're the last piece. Matthew handed Morales a card. Agent Hughes's number. Call her in the next hour. After that, the deal expires, and you're on your own. Matthew walked away, leaving Morales trembling by his car. 37 minutes later, Hector Morales walked into the FBI office and agreed to testify. With Morales' testimony, the case against Brian became ironclad: direct orders, specific instructions, documented violence. Brian's entire criminal empire laid bare by the lawyer who'd helped build it. But Matthew knew something the FBI didn't. Brian still had one card to play, and he'd play it soon. Brian Caldwell sat in federal detention, but Matthew knew the man too well to believe he was helpless. The smile when they'd arrested him, the confidence in his threats. Brian had a contingency plan. He's got someone on the inside, Matthew told Trevor and Karen. Police, FBI, courthouse, somewhere in the system. Brian has leverage. We vetted everyone, Karen said. Vet them again. Brian doesn't make moves without insurance. The answer came from an unexpected direction. Jason, reviewing security footage Trevor had provided. The boy had inherited his father's analytical mind and noticed something odd. Dad, look at this. Jason pulled up footage from outside the FBI office. This car appears 3 times in the past 8 days. Different times, different days. Always the same silver Corolla. Matthew studied the footage. Run the plates. The car belonged to Agent Kevin Dwyer, a junior FBI investigator on Karen's team. Dwyer had been present during every briefing, had access to all case files, knew the safe house locations. Son of a dash, Karen breathed. Kevin's been with the Bureau 9 years. Clean record. Good evaluations. Brian got to him somehow. Matthew pulled Dwyer's background. Daughter with leukemia, medical bills, debt. Brian probably offered cash enough to save his kid. What do we do? Trevor asked. We use him. Matthew's mind was already working the angles. Dwyer thinks he's Brian's lifeline. We make him believe we're moving Brian tomorrow, transport to federal court for arraignment. Feed Dwyer the route. Timing, everything. You want to bait an ambush, Karen said. I want Brian's rescue team to walk into our trap. Once they're in custody, Brian has nothing. No backup, no help, no cards left to play. Karen was quiet for a long moment. If this goes wrong, people die. If we don't do it, my family stays in danger. Brian will keep trying until he's either free or we're dead. They spent that night planning. The fake transport would use a decoy vehicle while the rail transfer happened 50 minutes earlier through a different route. Matthew and Trevor would be with the decoy team, ready for Brian's people. You don't have to do this, Karen said to Matthew. My agents can handle this. This is personal. Brian made it personal when he targeted my family. I need to see this through. The next morning, they fed Dwyer the false information. Matthew watched the agent's face as Karen explained the transport plan. Dwyer's micro-expressions revealed everything. The slight pupil dilation, the extra swallow, the way his hand touched his phone. He bought it, Trevor muttered. Now they waited. The decoy transport rolled out at 10:30 a.m. Armored vehicle, full security detail, weapons ready. Matthew rode in the follow car with Trevor and 4 FBI agents. The route took them through industrial areas with limited traffic, perfect ambush terrain. Eyes up, Matthew said. They'll hit us in the next 4 minutes. It came at the railroad crossing. A semi-truck stalled across the tracks, blocking the convoy. Before they could reverse, 2 vans pulled up behind them, boxing them in. 8 men emerged with military precision body armor, automatic weapons, coordinated fire teams. Professional operators, not street thugs. FBI, drop your weapons. Karen's voice boomed through speakers. The gunman opened fire instead, but Matthew and his team were ready. The armored vehicle's hidden gun ports opened, returning fire with overwhelming force. The stalled semi revealed FBI marksmen who'd been hidden inside. The vans found themselves surrounded by tactical teams that had been positioned an hour earlier. The gunfight lasted 75 seconds. When it ended, 6 attackers were in custody, 2 dead, none escaped. The lead gunman was Victor Salazar himself, Brian's right hand, personally leading the rescue attempt. The sight of FBI SWAT instead of an easy target broke something in Salazar's confidence. "You're going away forever," Karen told him in the back of a federal vehicle. "Unless you cooperate. Brian will have me killed." Brian is finished. His lawyer flipped. His network is dismantled. His rescue attempt failed. He's got nothing except a life sentence. She leaned closer. "But you could still cut a deal, testify against everyone. Brian, Hargrove, all of them. We'll relocate you. New identity, the works." Salazar thought about prison, about dying in a cell or on a prison yard because Brian ordered it. Finally, he nodded. "I'll testify." With Salazar's cooperation, the last piece fell into place: direct testimony from Brian's enforcer about killings, about orders given, about the trafficking operation's darkest secrets. Matthew stood outside the detention center where Brian waited for his formal arraignment. Through the window, he could see his former partner pacing, the confidence finally cracking as news of Salazar's capture reached him. Brian's phone privileges had been suspended. His lawyers were distancing themselves, and federal prosecutors were preparing an indictment so comprehensive that no judge would offer bail. "It's over," Trevor said, joining Matthew. "Brian's done." "Not yet." Matthew's voice was cold. "He hasn't faced what he did. Hasn't paid for terrorizing my family. The system will handle it. Life without parole. I need him to understand, to know exactly how thoroughly he lost." That evening, through legal channels and Karen's reluctant approval, Matthew was granted 15 minutes to speak with Brian Caldwell, ostensibly to provide victim impact testimony for pretrial proceedings. They faced each other across a metal table in the federal detention center. Brian looked haggard, the polished veneer finally stripped away. "You won," Brian said bitterly. "Congratulations. I survived. There's a difference." Matthew leaned forward. "You sent people to kill my children, Brian, my 9-year-old daughter, my 15-year-old son, while they slept. Business decision. You were a threat." "No, it was cowardice. You couldn't face consequences, so you targeted innocents." Matthew's voice was ice. "But here's what you need to understand. I could have killed you multiple times, multiple ways. But I didn't. Congratulations on your restraint. I didn't kill you because I wanted you to live with this. Every day in prison, you'll remember how thoroughly you lost. How your empire crumbled. How everyone you trusted turned against you. How a security consultant you thought was weak destroyed everything you built." Brian's jaw tightened. "Your lawyers abandoned you. Your wife testified against you. Your enforcer flipped. Your financial network is frozen. Your contacts are running scared." Matthew stood. "And me? I'm going home to my family. We'll rebuild, move on, live our lives while you rot in a cell knowing you gave up everything and gained nothing. I'll appeal. I'll find angles." "No, you won't, because I made sure of that. Every shred of evidence is ironclad. Every witness is protected. Every avenue you might exploit, I closed." Matthew moved toward the door, then paused. "Goodbye, Brian. I hope prison gives you plenty of time to think about your choices." "Matthew, don't. We're not partners. We're not friends. We're not anything. You're just another criminal who underestimated the wrong person." The door closed with absolute finality. The case against Brian Caldwell became federal news. A decorated security consultant who'd helped capture a major trafficking ring made for compelling headlines. Matthew avoided interviews, but the story spread anyway. 12 days after Brian's arrest, Damian Hargrove cut his own deal, offering testimony in exchange for reduced charges. With Hargrove's cooperation, the investigation expanded to other corrupt officials: 4 more Port Authority employees, 2 customs agents, and a county judge who'd been dismissing inconvenient cases. The network's scope was staggering. Brian had spent 6 years building a corruption infrastructure, bribing officials, cultivating leverage. His operation had moved an estimated $115 million in illegal weapons. He almost pulled it off, Karen admitted during one strategy session. If you hadn't started investigating when you did, Brian could have operated for years. He got greedy, Matthew said. Expanded too fast, trusted the wrong people. Classic criminal mistake, believing his own legend. But while the legal case progressed, Matthew faced a different challenge. Hollis Security Consulting had been irrevocably tainted. Clients canceled contracts. Banks froze. Accounts were pending investigation. Everything Matthew had built was collapsing. "We're ruined," he told Amanda one evening. "The company, our reputation. Brian destroyed it all." "No," Amanda said, taking his hand. "He gave you a chance to start over. You never loved that business anyway. You built it because it was safe, predictable. But you're not a safe, predictable person, Matthew. What am I supposed to do? Something that matters. Something you're actually passionate about." Jason, who'd been listening, spoke up. "You stopped Brian. You protected us. Other people need that kind of help." The idea crystallized over the following weeks. While prosecutors built their case, Matthew started planning not a security consulting firm, something different, something focused on helping people trapped in situations like his family had faced. He called it Guardian Solutions, a private investigation and protection firm specializing in cases involving organized crime, corruption, and complex threat services for people the system couldn't help quickly enough. Trevor Simmons signed on immediately. "About time you stopped pretending to be a corporate drone." Karen Hughes, impressed by Matthew's handling of the Brian case, became an unofficial advisor. "I can't partner with you formally, but I can point cases your way, situations where victims need help the FBI can't provide fast enough." The firm's first client came through an unexpected source, Natalie Caldwell. "I know you have every right to hate me," she said, meeting Matthew in a coffee shop. "But I need help. Brian's associates are targeting me. Threats, vandalism, harassment. They blame me for his arrest. Go to the FBI." "I have. They've provided some protection, but it's not enough. These people know how to evade surveillance." She met his eyes. "You understand how Brian's people operate. You know how to stop them." Matthew studied Brian's ex-wife. She'd lost everything: home, marriage, reputation. The FBI Witness Protection Program would eventually relocate her. But until then, she was vulnerable. "I'll help. But understand this. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it because letting Brian's people terrorize witnesses undermines everything we accomplished." "I understand. Thank you." Over the next 3 weeks, Matthew and Trevor identified 3 individuals targeting Natalie. One was a low-level enforcer hoping to earn points with Brian's imprisoned associates. Another was Victor Salazar's brother, seeking revenge for Victor's betrayal. The third was a former client of Brian's who'd lost money when the operation collapsed. Matthew handled them methodically. The enforcer got a visit from Trevor's most intimidating Marine buddies, explaining in vivid detail what would happen if harassment continued. Salazar's brother was traced to a motel where Matthew delivered evidence of the man's own criminal activities to local police, leverage for cooperation. The former client received documentation proving Brian had been stealing from him, too, redirecting anger toward the proper target. Within 4 weeks, the threat stopped. Natalie was safe. "You're good at this," she said when Matthew confirmed the situation was resolved. "Better than security consulting. This matters more." Guardian Solutions began attracting other clients. A whistleblower facing corporate retaliation, a family dealing with stalking that police couldn't stop, a journalist investigating corruption who needed protection. Each case, Matthew approached with the same intensity he'd applied to Brian: methodical investigation, strategic planning, overwhelming execution. He wasn't just solving problems. He was sending a message. People who preyed on the vulnerable had a new opponent. Meanwhile, Brian's trial date approached. Federal prosecutors had built an overwhelming case testimony from Natalie, Hector Morales, Victor Salazar, and Damian Hargrove. Physical evidence from shipping manifests, financial records, intercepted communications. Even the attempted prison break provided additional charges. Brian's defense team tried everything: suppress evidence, challenge witnesses, claim coercion. Every motion was denied. Every challenge was refuted. 3 weeks before trial, Brian's lead attorney requested a meeting with prosecutors. "My client wants to plead guilty," the lawyer said. In exchange, he'll cooperate fully with any remaining investigations. Why? Karen asked. His position can't get worse. He wants to avoid trial. Avoid having his crimes detailed publicly. Too late for dignity, Matthew said. He'd been included in the meeting as a victim representative. Brian doesn't get to hide. Mr. Hollis, I understand your anger. You don't understand anything. Brian ordered children killed. He trafficked weapons that killed people around the world. He corrupted officials and destroyed lives. He faces everything publicly, or I'll make sure every media outlet knows his crimes in explicit detail. The lawyer paled. That's not your decision. Actually, Karen interjected, Mr. Hollis is right. Brian gave up any right to privacy when he chose this. We're going to trial. Brian's response came through his lawyer the next day, a handwritten note delivered to Matthew via the federal prosecutor's office. You've won, Matthew. I acknowledge that. But don't pretend you're better than me. You broke laws, too. Pressured people, used force. The only difference between us is I had the honesty to admit what I was. Matthew read the note and smiled coldly. Brian still didn't understand. The difference wasn't honesty. It was purpose. Everything Matthew had done, the intimidation, the leverage, the calculated force, had been to protect innocence and stop a predator. Brian had done it for profit and ego. Matthew threw the note away and focused on preparing his victim impact statement for trial. He'd make sure Brian heard exactly what his choices had cost. The trial began on a cold November morning, November 18th. Federal courthouse, packed gallery, cameras waiting outside. United States versus Brian Caldwell had become the most high-profile criminal case in Seattle in years. Matthew sat with his family in the victim section. Jason wore a suit, looking more adult than his 15 years. Lily stayed home with Amanda's sister, too young for the proceedings. Amanda's hand never left Matthew's, a steady anchor through the storm. Brian entered in an orange jumpsuit, handcuffed, the corporate polish completely stripped away. He looked older, diminished. His eyes found Matthew's across the courtroom, and for a moment, they simply stared at each other, former partners, former friends, once upon a time, now just adversary and destroyer. The prosecution's opening statement laid out the scope of Brian's crimes with brutal efficiency. For years of weapons trafficking, nearly $38 million in illegal profits, 2 confirmed killings, 3 more suspected, attempted killing of the Hollis family, corruption spanning multiple agencies. Brian Caldwell built an empire of violence, the prosecutor said. And when that empire was threatened, he tried to kill a family, including 2 children, to protect his secrets. Brian's defense tried to paint him as a businessman who'd gotten in over his head, manipulated by Salazar and Hargrove. The jury wasn't buying it. Over 4 weeks, witnesses testified. Natalie Caldwell described discovering Brian's crimes, her voice breaking as she explained hearing him order the Hollis family's death. Hector Morales outlined the financial structures designed specifically to launder blood money. Victor Salazar detailed killings Brian had ordered and shipments Brian had personally supervised. Damian Hargrove, the corrupt port official, admitted under oath that Brian had bribed him with nearly $1.8 million over 4 years. He needed access, Hargrove said. Needed manifests altered, inspections redirected. He paid well, and I looked the other way. Even when people died? The prosecutor asked. Even then. The jury's expressions turned stony. Matthew took the stand on day 17. The courtroom fell silent as he was sworn in. Mr. Hollis, the prosecutor began. Tell us how you discovered Brian Caldwell's criminal activities. Matthew described it methodically, the financial discrepancies, Trevor's warnings, the surveillance at his home. He spoke calmly, factually, letting the events speak for themselves. What happened on the night of October 10th? My son woke me at 2:30 a.m. He'd seen armed men approaching our house. We escaped with minutes to spare. Matthew's voice never wavered. We watched from a distance as those men fired into my son's bedroom, into the room where he should have been sleeping. How did that make you feel? Terrified. Enraged. Determined. Determined to do what? To protect my family. And to ensure Brian Caldwell never hurt anyone again. Brian's defense attorney cross-examined aggressively. Mr. Hollis, isn't it true you've used violence during this investigation? I defended myself and others when attacked. Yes. You've threatened Brian Caldwell's lawyer, Hector Morales. I offered Mr. Morales a chance to cooperate and protect his daughter's future. He chose to take it. You orchestrated a confrontation with Victor Salazar. I helped the FBI apprehend dangerous criminals. Matthew met the lawyer's eyes steadily. Everything I did was to stop people who were trafficking weapons and killing witnesses. If you're suggesting I should have done nothing while my family was targeted, you're welcome to make that argument. The lawyer backed off. Attacking a father who'd protected his family from armed criminals was a losing strategy. But the defense's most dramatic moment came when Brian himself took the stand. Against his lawyer's advice, he insisted on testifying. I made mistakes, Brian said, his voice carrying the false sincerity Matthew recognized from countless business meetings. I got involved with bad people. They threatened me, forced me to cooperate. When Matthew started investigating, I panicked. I never meant for anyone to get hurt. The attack on the Hollis family, the prosecutor asked during cross-examination. Victor Salazar acted without my authorization. I didn't order dash. We have recorded phone calls, Mr. Caldwell, your voice ordering. Clean it up. All of them, including the kids. That was taken out of context. What context makes ordering children's deaths acceptable? Brian had no answer. His testimony collapsed into contradictions and deflections. By the time he left the stand, even his defense attorney looked defeated. The prosecution's closing argument was devastating. Brian Caldwell is a killer, a criminal mastermind who built an empire on violence and corruption. He targeted children to protect his secrets. He corrupted officials, trafficking weapons that killed people around the world. The evidence is overwhelming. The testimony is irrefutable. There is only one possible verdict: guilty on all counts. The defense tried to salvage something. Yes, Brian Caldwell made terrible choices, but he was manipulated, pressured, operating under duress from truly violent criminals. He deserves punishment, but not the sentence the prosecution seeks. The jury deliberated for 5 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood. On count 1, weapons trafficking, guilty. Count 2, conspiracy to commit murder, guilty. Count 3, attempted murder of the Hollis family, guilty. Guilty, 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 guilty. 39 counts. 39 convictions. Brian's face went white. His lawyer slumped. In the gallery, Natalie Caldwell wept not from sadness, but release. Matthew felt Amanda squeeze his hand. Jason nodded once, satisfied. Justice wasn't pretty, wasn't dramatic. It was just a jury doing their job, looking at evidence, and reaching the only possible conclusion. Sentencing came 3 weeks later. The judge, a stern woman in her late 60s, reviewed the case files with obvious disgust. Mr. Caldwell, I've been a federal judge for 25 years. I've seen terrorists, organized crime bosses, serial killers. You rank among the worst because you had everything: success, wealth, family, and you threw it away for greed. Worse, when threatened with exposure, you tried to kill children. Brian tried to speak. The judge cut him off. I don't want to hear it. Nothing you say matters anymore. She looked at her notes. Life imprisonment without possibility of parole on the murder conspiracy charges. Additional consecutive sentences totaling 160 years on remaining counts. You will die in federal prison. Bailiff, remove him. As Brian was led away, he looked at Matthew one final time. No words, no defiance, just the hollow realization that he'd lost everything and gained nothing. Outside the courthouse, media clamored for statements. Matthew kept it brief. Justice was served. My family is safe. That's all that matters. What about Hollis Security Consulting? That chapter is closed. I've started a new firm, Guardian Solutions. We help people facing situations like my family experienced. Anyone needing protection from criminals the system can't stop fast enough. Some call you a vigilante. I'm a father who protected his family. I'm a citizen who helped law enforcement stop criminals. If that's controversial, then we have bigger problems than Brian Caldwell. He walked away with his family, ignoring further questions. 7 months later, Matthew stood in the new offices of Guardian Solutions' 11th floor, downtown Seattle, view of the Sound. Not as prestigious as Hollis Security Consulting's old location, but honest, earned through work that actually mattered. Trevor Simmons managed operations. Karen Hughes had officially retired from the FBI to join as their law enforcement liaison, her decades of experience making Guardian Solutions exceptionally effective at navigating legal boundaries. Two former military operators and a cybersecurity expert rounded out the team. They'd taken 17 cases in 7 months. A whistleblower facing corporate assassination attempts. A family terrorized by organized crime. A journalist investigating human trafficking who needed protection. Each case they'd approached with the same intensity Matthew had used against Brian. "You're building something important," Amanda said, visiting the office during her lunch break. "People talk about you, the man who took down a criminal empire." "We took it down," Matthew said. "You, Jason, Trevor, Karen, not just me." "But you led," Amanda replied. "That's what matters." Jason had started high school carrying himself with new confidence. The trauma of that night in October was still there. He saw a therapist weekly, but it hadn't broken him. Instead, it had shown him his own strength. "Dad's teaching me defensive tactics," Jason told his friends. "Says I should know how to protect myself." "Your dad's kind of a badass." "Yeah, he is." Lily had recovered more easily, children's resilience being remarkable. She still slept with a night light, still checked locks before bed, but she laughed more than she worried. Her drawing had improved, too vivid, confident strokes replacing the tentative lines from before. Brian Caldwell's appeals had all been denied. He was serving his life sentence at USP Florence Admax, the Supermax prison in Colorado, isolated, contained, forgotten by everyone except the people whose lives he'd destroyed. Victor Salazar was in witness protection, living somewhere in the Midwest under a new identity. Damian Hargrove had received a reduced sentence for cooperation, 14 years at a medium security facility. Hector Morales practiced law in a small town in Idaho. His daughter attended medical school debt-free thanks to witness protection program support. Natalie Caldwell had remarried a high school teacher from Oregon who'd never heard of her ex-husband until their third date. She sent Matthew a Christmas card that year. "Thank you for giving me a second chance at life." One evening in April, Matthew received an unusual call, a voice he hadn't heard in years. "Matthew Hollis, this is Colonel Marcus Keene, Army Intelligence. You don't know me, but I know your work. We've been tracking Guardian Solutions." "Why?" "Because we need people with your particular skill set. Not for military operations, for something else. There are American citizens abroad facing threats from criminal organizations. NGO workers, journalists, business people. The State Department can't help fast enough. The military can't operate in civilian contexts. But someone like you you want me to run extractions, protection details, high-risk situations requiring someone who understands both legal frameworks and operational necessities." Keene paused. "Fully sanctioned, appropriately funded, complete legal protection." Matthew thought about it. More danger, more risk, but also more people helped, more lives saved. "Send me the details. I'll consider it." He discussed it with Amanda that night. "It means more time away, more risk, but it's important work." "You were always going to do important work," Amanda said. "Just took you a while to figure out what that meant. You're okay with this?" "I'm okay with you being who you really are, a protector, a fighter, someone who doesn't walk away when people need help." She kissed him. "Just come home. Always come home." "I will." For months later, Guardian Solutions took its first international case, an aid worker trapped in a conflict zone, criminal gangs demanding ransom. Matthew assembled the team, coordinated with local authorities, and executed a clean extraction. The aid worker returned home safely. No shots fired, no casualties, just careful planning and perfect execution. "You're good at this," Trevor said on the flight back. "I know. How long do you think you'll keep doing it?" Matthew looked out the window at clouds passing below. "As long as people need help. As long as my family's safe. As long as it matters." Brian used to say that Matthew was too idealistic, that he couldn't make hard choices. Brian was wrong about a lot of things. Back in Seattle, Jason had started training seriously martial arts, defensive tactics, situational awareness. "I want to be like you," he told his father. "Be better than me," Matthew replied. "Be someone who never has to make the choices I made. But if you do have to make them, make sure they're for the right reasons." "How do I know what the right reasons are?" "If you're protecting someone weaker, someone innocent, someone who can't protect themselves, that's usually right. If you're doing it for ego, profit, revenge, that's usually wrong." "What about what you did to Brian?" "I stopped a criminal, protected my family, that was right. If I'd enjoyed it, if I'd drawn it out for satisfaction, that would have been wrong." Matthew met his son's eyes. The difference between justice and revenge is whether it's about stopping harm or causing suffering. Remember that. Lily was drawing in her room when Matthew checked on her before bed. What are you working on, kiddo? Our family. Look, you're the big one in front protecting us. The picture showed a strong figure standing between smaller figures and dark shadows in the background, simple, childlike, but capturing something essential. That's perfect, sweetheart. Dad, are the bad men ever coming back? No, they're gone. You're safe because we stopped them. You, me, Jason, Mom, we're a team. Good. I like our team. Matthew tucked her in, feeling the weight of responsibility and gratitude in equal measure. Brian had tried to destroy his family and instead had shown Matthew what truly mattered: not business success, not money, not reputation, just this. That night, Matthew stood on his back porch looking at the stars. Amanda joined him, bringing coffee. Thinking about Brian? She asked. About how close we came to losing everything. About how different things could have been but they weren't. You protected us. We won. We won, Amanda corrected. Never just you. Then we celebrate together. Amanda raised her coffee mug. To second chances. To justice. To family. To family, Matthew echoed. Somewhere in Colorado, in a concrete cell, Brian Caldwell stared at walls and thought about all the choices that had led him there, about the empire he'd built and lost, about Matthew Hollis, who'd beaten him completely. But Brian's thoughts didn't matter anymore. His threats were empty. His power was gone. He was just another prisoner counting days until death, forgotten by the world he'd tried to dominate. Meanwhile, Matthew Hollis was building something better, something that would outlast any criminal empire, any scheme, any threat. He was building a life worth protecting. The war was over. The Guardian had won, and the future stretched ahead, full of possibility and purpose. That's the end of the story. What do you think? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Thanks for watching.